I came to the realization I don't really care about views. Somebody told me yesterday that my views are so low that they would kill themselves if their views were that low, and I don't really care. I really believe that this is a great way to express myself and be creative. And, if people enjoy the content, that's great. I think, we live in this era where everybody, wants to be a celebrity. Everybody feels like, they're important, or feels like that they're elite. We all can't be elite. We all can't be celebrities. I just want to live like a good life. I think it's great not being famous, where everything I say isn't necessarily critiqued, or everything I do isn't critiqued. I could just create my art and move around. And I think some people take that for granted, man. I feel like, it would suck to be a celebrity. It would suck more so to be a celebrity and be broke. And, yeah, man, to be embarrassed on the internet. Basically, I think about Benzino. I kind of saw as far as that's a possibility of the future. If I continue down that path, as far as I see some similarities that we have, because I've burned bridges with a lot of people. And when you burn bridges, it can kind of sting, because it's man, maybe if I had handled that differently, if I wasn't as real, speaking my mind. Obviously, me and Benzino clashed. So if I had just kind of been soft and not spoke up about being exploited or being taken advantage of, or not being appreciated. And I think those are kind of the choices you have to make, not just in the entertainment industry, but in life. What are you going to let people walk over you? Let's just say that from his experiences, I can learn. I know I don't want to be 60 years old and have a drug problem, be addicted to cocaine or addicted to steroids. And I know people make fun of him on the internet, and he makes great music. It's no problem, as far as with his music. From my perspective, I think he has an incredible legacy. But in the latter years of his life, where you have to kind of beg people for money, I think that's sad. It really is. It's you don't want to be 60 years old. So I think it's really important to treat people right. And get to a point where it's maybe your daughter doesn't speak to you. I don't want to be like that, man. I honestly want to make the right choices and put God first in my life. And hopefully I can have a better outcome. And at the end of the day, though, I could die tomorrow. I hope to live a long life. But it's if I do get the opportunity to live as long as he does, I hope my choices are better. I wish that for you too. I think the only way is Jesus Christ, and no one comes to the Father except by him. That's what it says in the Bible. I spend a lot of time, listening to scripture. I love reading Proverbs, love reading Psalms. And David had so much advice for his experiences that he was going through in life. And I feel you don't have to necessarily, some people can take for granted the blessings that they do have. But the main point of this video is I feel you don't have to chase fame. You don't need to chase views. You could just be you and be happy regardless. I'm so happy to have a phone and the time to be able to create content, that people come on my channel and are willing to talk to me. Because at the end of the day, who am I really? I've made a couple songs that are on streaming sites or whatever, but I've never done anything like, you know, super significant, not to diminish my accomplishments, because I feel like I have like accomplished a lot, but I'm by no means famous, and that's okay. You know, it's okay, like, not to be famous. Like, it's not the worst. You know, and people act like it, especially in the entertainment industry. Oh, like, you know, you don't have these views, but like, I'm a human being. I feel like, you know, just by that, even more, I'm a child of Christ. So I feel like, you know, those people who feel like my views aren't high enough are actually kind of like missing out on speaking with me, not the other way around. Because, like, number one, I think, like, you know, if you look at my past interviews, I ask the best questions of any platform in music, hands down. I'm a better journalist, probably the only person who maybe is even capable on an intellectual level of asking the type of questions I have would be somebody like Charlemagne the God. But I also have like the combined skills of DJ Vlad, like when it comes to research. I feel he doesn't really ask like, you know, necessarily deep questions, but he does good research. And I feel like I have both of those skills. So at the end of the day, man, like it's not necessarily about the views, but also I think that if larger artists would come on the platform, I would give them a better interview. And I got into a discussion with an artist yesterday. I'm not gonna mention his name because it's like I'm not trying to clout chase. And it was like a really genuine discussion. And he was saying like I didn't want him on the platform because, you know, he's too truthful. Honestly, the reason was because I get tired of me, like, you know, kind of like arranging my day around the virtual interviews and people cancel, not necessarily respecting my time. You know, he didn't seem like, you know, super enthused. Like, I was really impressed that he had kind of, after that fact, had said, like, you know, he had checked out some of my content, what I appreciated, but he was saying, like, you know, people like him and Royce's time are valuable. And, like, you know, he didn't realize the views were that low because my subscriber base is pretty high, you know, and I do have a lot of views. But at the end of the day, man, it's like I know, like, you know, I'm capable, and I'm probably, like, you know, a better journalist than anybody in hip-hop, for sure. But also, like, at the same point, it may not be for everybody because my intellectual level is above a lot of people in hip-hop. I feel it's very low vibrational. It's like they're not able to keep up. So they don't really care about, like, you know, certain issues, like, you know, that I care about. When's the last time you've seen, like, anyone in hip-hop talking about the persecution that Christians are facing? I just reached out to D1, who declined me for an interview, like, you know, because he wanted to get paid for the interview. And I think, like, you know, that's kind of, like, you know, absurd that people, like, you know what I'm saying, want to get paid for the interview. I went to Harvard Extension for graduate school. He went through Harvard. I think he was in a fellowship program, but how is he really, like, you know, any better than me just by having a large following? I think people get too wrapped up in the following. And then also, what I would like to point out is just because, like, someone appears on your platform, it doesn't mean, like, necessarily that's going to correlate to views. And I think that a lot of people are overestimating their value. And maybe, like, you know, if you break down all the clips, like, you know, what DJ Vlad does, which is cool, you know, you're going to make your money back on an interview. But I just think it's kind of, like, ridiculous how people, like, you know, are trying to make, like, you know, another source of income by appearing on podcasts. And it really dilutes journalism, because then you have a lot of people who aren't very intellectual, but they just are able to shoot content and, you know, maybe, like, you know, are ignorant, promoting negativity for the views, as opposed to talking about real issues that actually matter, like the global persecution of Christians in Nigeria or Syria. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I don't really care about views. I don't care about being famous. I just really care about creating, and I'm going to continue to do that regardless.